During a new interview, billionaire Elon Musk said that his Neuralink company hopes to start implanting brain chips in humans sometimes next year. Kind of intriguing, but I don't think I'd get the first one. I mean, you remember the iPhone 1? Exactly, you know? You get the first chip, and in 3 years, everyone will be like making fun of you. You got the one?
It's one of several massive leaps in brain science technology that is literally creating a future of potentially infinite possibilities and also concerns about how this technology could be used or misused.
It was the viral video moment seen around the world. In April, a monkey playing a game of Pong using only its mind with the help of what's called a Neuralink. The device is Elon Musk's latest venture into a fast-evolving tech space. Tiny chips that get implanted in the brain. Sounds like something out of The Matrix, but this is not a movie.
Welcome to the real world.
Brain chips are part of a revolutionary field that's been around longer than you think.
Is this science fiction or is this reality?
It is absolutely science fiction that has turned into real science. What Elon Musk did with these monkey trials showing how monkeys with brain chips could control computers with nothing but their minds, the first version of this happened in the 60s.
And have you ever thought about being able to unlock your car or pay at the store just by waving your hand? Well, a body piercing expert is bringing that to the future in Lansing with a new product. Josh Sanchez is here for you with a look at chip implants.
Lanier was interested in technology, so he combined it with his love of body modification to come up with this.
I felt that it belongs in the body enhancement industry. It is an enhancement. The future will be based on it.
The implants with RFID and NFC technology can be connected to smart devices, and it can act like a virtual wallet. The implants are not completely new. Employees at a company in Wisconsin were voluntarily chipped in 2019.
I'm here at a time in life when this was unheard of, when it was just movies as a child, you know? So now to see that this is actually a thing that's happening and I'm a part of it, it's historical.
Experts predict that BCI has the potential to be a $3.85 billion industry by 2027, according to Allied Market Research. But with great promise comes great concerns.
You're going to have to share your brain data with private companies. Are you willing to share your brain data only to have a better interaction with your nearby devices? This is the question.
What are the other ways it could be used that causes pause?
The peril of this technology, the risk of this technology is if we push too hard, too fast, you can use it for virtually anything. When we go beyond trying to help people who are struggling, paraplegics, quadriplegics, locked-in patients, people who can't speak, to improving people who are normally functioning, giving you a brain chip as an example. It's almost downright frightening.
Engineers at Northwestern University have developed a flying microchip. It's about the size of a grain of sand and does not actually have a motor or engine. It flies around by being dispersed by the wind. Here now to tell us more about it is Northwestern professor and bioelectronics pioneer John Rogers. Good morning.
Hello. Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm sure you anticipate that this makes people nervous, that it's going to be easier for people to spy on other countries, spy on us. To those people, what do you say?
And then finally, technological innovations that change the world. I don't know if you follow it closely at all, but the big concern in the US right now is that China is outpacing the United States in 5G technology. And what's the thing with 5G technology? It runs everything better and faster. It's more ubiquitous. It becomes something in everything. My kids got me a pair of sneakers for, I think, Christmas, my birthday. Yeah, it was my birthday. And I was reading the brochure on them because my kids tell me they're really hip and they're really cool. It's okay. And I find out it has a chip in the shoe so that you can verify its authenticity until you want to trade it or sell it. And I thought to myself, next time I go to the airport, I'm not wearing those shoes. But I mean, you begin to realize that everything is chipped, but who can access it the most quickly? And I haven't even touched on the issue of cyber warfare, which we're also losing at and falling behind. That's simply the greatest fear. It was just last month, a little more than 4 weeks ago, the Israeli government sponsored an international conference. They invited 10 nations, funny number, I don't have to come 10, as well as the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the Bank of International Settlement. They're the ones who handle all the transitions around the world, for a plan how to respond when Russia and China launch cyber warfare on the US economy. How are we going to deal with that? How are we going to defend against that? We already know last week there was 6 separate attacks by the Chinese against our financial systems and many of our state governments. It's a constant ongoing thing. I had one guy whose job is basically chasing these things down and trying to stop them. He said, there are so many, they're coming so fast, there's no way we can keep up with it. They're just overloading us. Technological innovation means the ability to shut down your systems so that they no longer function. So as at the same time that every government in the world is moving into a digital currency, every one major country in the world is moving. If you read the articles, you see they're going there. They're going to a digital currency. It's happening, it's coming. As they're doing that, they're also looking at the fact that we now have this incredible vulnerability. And I know you're saying, well, what about cryptocurrency? Well, your president has just sponsored a new bill to bring that under government control as well. But you see the whole idea, and we understand, what's the end game here? Why would somebody go into a country like Ukraine with nothing really to gain? Well, first of all, it's the breadbasket of Europe. It's the largest wheat producer in the world. It also produces a ton of agricultural products. But more importantly, all of the Russian fuel lines, energy lines, gas and natural gas, go through Ukraine and into Europe. So whoever controls those fuel lines controls Europe. Because Europe as a whole gets 30% of its energy from Russia, through Ukraine, through Nord Stream 1. And amazingly, our current placeholder in the White House invited Russia to continue building Nord Stream 2, which would have increased dependency. The Germans, who do not like us, have never been our friends, and I think many of them still think they should have won World War II, basically have been complicit, along with Italy and other countries in Europe, in trying to displace the United States. And we'll touch on that very briefly, but it's a big issue. So that if Putin is successful, Europe could be forced into submission, especially because we no longer produce any excess energy to be able to replace what Russia provides for them now. Most of us begin to realize that not only causes disruption, it really would require the reordering of our entire life. It's a powerful thing when you're talking about factories that run this stuff. And of course, because Europe has been much more aggressive in pursuing climate change, they've shut down all of their nuclear plants. And the same plan is going on here, where the Energy Department under the current administration has just refused to relicense 2 nuclear energy plants in Florida that have been operating since 1973. With no explanation, other than the fact that we have to move away from the cleanest form of energy in the world. You know, it's interesting. As John McCain put it so, as he often did in a very comical way, he said, Russia is nothing else but a gas station with nuclear weapons. In a very real sense, even to this day, 50% of their income is oil. 50%. Their economy runs on it. And, you know, it was really interesting. People saying, why didn't he do this during the Trump era? Well, think about it. We were energy sufficient. We didn't have to import oil. And we started supplying natural gas to the European nations so they wouldn't be dependent upon Russian oil. But, you know, because the most important crisis facing the world today is climate change, our government, in its immeasurable wisdom, decided that what we need to do is become energy dependent upon others. So Europe shut down most of their nuclear plants, got rid of all their coal-burning energy plants, as China is building them daily. China puts up 1 coal plant a day to produce enough energy to keep their engine going forward. And they're buying one of the resources. Their coal comes from Russia. They have entered into an alliance and agreement now that they're buying Russian oil in huge numbers in order to continue to support and provide funds for the Russian economy. But you see, we looked at Russia as being a defeated enemy with no hope of coming back, that we viewed them as being like Germany after World War II. And we looked at China as this giant market to be exploited. And in that regard, corporate greed and political corruption induced our government and business elites to start feeding the dragon until it has become so big and so dominant that now we live in fear of it. Over that time, China has become the sole provider of 90% of our pharmaceuticals. Realize that 90% of the drugs that you pick up in the drugstore are produced by China. 90% of computer chips produced by China. 90% of our rare earth metals that we need to run our engines of industry are mined in China. They also own or control a significant percentage of the major corporations. When you think about Disney and the NBA and other groups like that will do anything that the Chinese tell them to do and will be silent about abuses that are obvious, people like LeBron, who has nothing to say about the Uyghurs and so forth, you realize that the reason they're doing this, as one of the owners of the Golden State Warriors, who himself is a billionaire, readily admitted in an interview, nobody cares about the Uyghurs. Why? Because they're making millions. I mean, they're making billions of dollars in profits by their coalition and colluding with the Chinese. One senior U.S. diplomat said recently, the greatest risk facing the U.S. in the 21st century is a two-front war involving its strongest military rivals, China and Russia. Part of our reluctance, and I'm not anxious for it, but part of our reluctance from taking stronger measures against Russia and the Ukraine is the fact that we can't afford to fight on 2 fronts. Even though our military doctrine for decades has been to be able to fight a 2-front war, because we did during World War II, the idea has been we can't afford to that. And they just cut the military budget by several hundreds of millions of dollars this year. A former Prime Minister of Sweden, a guy named Carl Bildt, who's still a respected commentator on international affairs, said, what has not yet been fully appreciated is the possibility of both happening simultaneous in a more or less coordinated fashion. First Ukraine, then Taiwan. These 2 acts of conquest would fundamentally shift the global balance of power, sounding the death knell for global peace for decades. This is what made China's response to the invasion so fascinating. Despite U.S.'s pleadings to do what they can to dissuade them, it's interesting, they actually leaked something to their news agencies by one of the senior editors of one of their main news distributors in China. And he said this, he said, China needs to back up Russia while refraining from treading on the toes of the United States and the European Union, for in the future, China will need Russia's understanding and support when wrestling with America to solve the Taiwan issue once and for all. So what was China's response to the invasion of Ukraine? They sent a squadron of fighters into Taiwan airspace. That was their response. Because by the time we get to the book of Revelation, we find there are 2 sole powers left in the world. One is China, at least it calls the kings of the Orient or Asia. And the other is a confederacy of nations built around a reconfigured world empire that is called the Empire of the Beast and the Antichrist. But we'll have to get into that. It's a lot of detail behind that.